Well, good morning, good morning, good morning. Welcome back, welcome back, welcome back. Happy Saturday. Happy Saturday. This is House Talk
What's
Pregame.
going on? What's going on?
I am Dr. Lauren Pitts Bounds, and Ronnie just disappeared on us. He is, I don't know what happened to him. Where'd he go? Anyway, welcome back, everybody. This is House Talk Pregame. I'm Dr. Lauren Pitts Bounds. We have a great show lined up for you today. I have no idea where Ronnie disappeared to. We have a very special guest back with us today, Mr. Micah Dwanyi. And Ronnie, when he gets his buns back on here, we'll do a formal introduction. So, look, today, folks, we are talking about one of my favorite topics. We are talking about toxic masculinity. And wait, let's see what Ronnie Ransome Jr. is doing. Anyway, we are talking about toxic masculinity today, and there he is. You're back.
I I think Jerry Jones might have seen me and your husband's conversation yesterday and messing with my internet this morning. Because it's been fine this entire time, but as soon as we go live, now I get kicked out. Good morning, everybody. I'm sure Dr. Pitts has something to do with that as well. For all those out there who know it's March 16th, that means we know that free agency started on March 11th. So somebody let Jerry Jones know that he can pick up a free agent or two. Um, anyway, I had to get all that out because you just kicked me out and everything.
Because you haven't seen me in a month.
I know, right? It's been a
He
minute,
hasn't
right?
seen his surrogate mom in a month, and he had to just get all of his ignorance out and purge and cleanse and purify. And he had to take his emotional enema. Go ahead, fool.
Wow.
Emotional.
I
That's
see how you
me.
tried to.
The
I see.
emotional enema.
I see how you tried to. I can't even say what I want to say because that's what you do with an enema, anyways. Um, welcome back, everybody. Welcome back. We got, like Dr. Pitt said, we got a great topic to talk about today because I think it is a really important topic to kind of keep at the forefront of people's minds, especially when we talk about toxic masculinity within sports,
Mhm.
and things of that nature. How can we spot it? How can we fix it? Especially for the male athletes that this conversation is involved with. We'll get into, like, all the different types of toxic masculinity, how that plays out at the high school level, collegiate level, even professional level, and share some perspectives on what we would like to see maybe different about how we can, really address this issue. um Dr. Pitts, did you have a mental health tip of the week this week?
Yeah, stop harassing people for recreational sport. It's not nice. That's all I got.
Wow. I felt that was more. I felt, sometimes people just catch stray bullets, unfortunately. And I don't caught two strays already this morning. I ain't even did nothing wrong. I was just speaking facts this morning. But anywho, I did have some a quick shout out though.
Yeah.
Um, so Virginia State football team this coming season is opening their season in Canton, Ohio, against the Benedict Tigers in the NFL Pro Football Hall of Game Classic. Um,
Nice.
yeah, so
Congratulations.
thank you. Well, I mean, I don't know why I'm saying thank you, like I'm playing, but yeah, no, shout
Alma
out to the
mater.
Trojans. I know, right? Well, it's crazy. The last time we played Benedict in a bowl type game like that
Hmm.
was in 2013. We played them at MetLife Stadium for the
Okay.
New York Urban League Classic,
Nice.
um, which was really fun to play in MetLife Stadium.
Nice.
Um, we didn't end up winning the game,
Hmm.
but phenomenal experience. That's going to be really dope to be playing in Canton, Ohio, where the Pro Football Hall of Fame is and everything.
Hmm.
That's where they open their season at. For
Hmm.
those who keep up with HBCU football, know that Benedict is just coming back from another undefeated season.
Nice.
They ended up losing, I think, in the second or third round of the playoffs. They had a phenomenal
Hmm.
season last year.
Hmm.
So going to be a really good game, really great test beginning of the season for Virginia State. So shout out to them for getting that opportunity to go to Canton. And I believe the game is going to be on NFL Network if I'm not mistaken.
That's what's
So
up. I
yeah,
have
that's
something to say, but the sort of piggybacks on that a little bit. Since you don't ever give me no credit for nothing, I said I'm gonna wait and tell him face to face because I actually I have been funneling some folks to your alma mater, and I am proud to announce that one of my best friend's daughter, who's a senior at one of the high schools in Bowie, Maryland, is making her way to Virginia State. And I'm currently working on one of my baby cousins too, because you all have a your architecture program is
Yeah.
on point too. That architecture program is on point. So, well, another one of my baby cousins that's in South Jersey, she know this. She replied to UVA, and I'm like, no, you need to be looking at Virginia State. Gotta look at Virginia
All right,
State.
that's Virginia Tech. Why won't
I
UVA?
did, and I told her about tech too. But and I say this respectfully, no disrespect to anybody or anything like that, but they're being reared in a part of southern New Jersey that is not diverse. Isn't that a PC way to say it? That's not diverse. And I thought that in light of the upbringing, that they truly could benefit for this beautiful cultural experience that we have on our HBCU campuses. So, ultimately the decision is hers and her parents, but we had a meeting last Sunday and I'm like, HBCU, HBCU, HBCU. So we'll see how that turns out. But one of them is definitely housing deposit made the whole 9 yards. She's definitely going. So
Hey,
something super
well,
excited about.
shout out to your friend's daughter.
Yeah,
She's gonna have a phenomenal time at Virginia State.
yeah.
I always
And
say,
she
I think
plays
it's
soccer too. She plays soccer, but she's on the fence about whether or not she wants to play at the collegiate level. Because what she told her mom was, I want to be able to enjoy college. I do not want to, at the collegiate level, sports is a job. She was like, yeah, no.
right.
I
No,
want to have some fun.
absolutely.
So yeah. So go ahead.
Well,
Just
shout
wanted
out
to
to her for that.
yeah, yeah,
That's
that's
dope.
enough.
That's dope. So, if you don't have any other news or updates, I guess we can go ahead and get right into this topic and everything. So,
Okay.
we got a returning guest this morning. I wasn't sure if Dr. Pitts introduced him or not. So we got Micah Dwanyi back with us this morning. Micah, how
Mhm.
you doing this morning, man?
I'm good. I'm good. Great to be back.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Since the last time you were here, man, you've had some really exciting things going on in your world, man. Just finished your master's degree back in December, correct?
Just no, just in February actually. I just finished.
February.
Yeah.
Congratulations, man. Congratulations. Tell the people what you got your master's degree in, man.
So it was really interesting coming out of my undergrad where I did a dual studies program in health science and psych. I went into my master's for counseling, and then with like I'd written two books right before that. I got into speaking. So I actually switched my master's more to tailor to what I was involved in. So I ended up getting a master's of arts degree in communications. And that was like it was like one of the best experiences I've had in school. It was actually way better than even undergrad. I learned so much.
Hey.
Wow.
And yeah, it's crazy to be done. So
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Congratulations, man. So now that you got your masters and everything, what's next for you in that realm for you, sir?
we were talking just before the show started. I'm thinking about going into academia. Um, I have to look at where. I think there's a space for me there just because I understand the school system.
Mhm.
And I think I'd really like to be in service, but I know I want to protect my work-life balance because I have so much going on, public
Mhm.
speaking, more writing. I just had the opportunity to write a commercial for this company, which was like the craziest thing ever. And I've been
Mhm.
given
Oh,
opportunities like that. So of course, my coaching, running clinics and stuff like that. I kind of
Mhm.
want to get myself set up in a position where I can continue like multi-platform advocacy because I'm a curious person and I like
Mhm.
to pursue different endeavors. So it's a little bit scattered right now, but I'll have some organization soon.
right.
Can I just had an aha moment. I know before the show I was telling you about one of my colleagues that I wanted you to reach out to. But just based on everything that you just said, you may, and I'm not going to put your business out there, but you may want to take a look at those opportunities that we were discussing for you. You may look at Edward Waters College in up in Jacksonville, which is an HBCU up there, Division 3. But then you got Bethune-Cookman University right in Daytona Beach. Just based on everything that I know about you and the additional things that you shared with us before the show, I think both of those may be excellent fits for you.
Okay. Thank you.
Something to think about.
Thank you.
Something to
Yeah.
think about. But if I had to lean, and this is totally biased because I graduated from BWC, I would say look at Edward Waters. Only because there's an exorbitant amount of transformation that's going on up in Jacksonville, on the east side of Jacksonville. The expansions that they're doing, the Jacksonville Jaguars are up there. They are heavily involved in the African American community up there, and the work that they're doing to help to transform the east side of Jacksonville and really increase the opportunities for us as people of color. Jaguars are doing the darn thing, and how they're supporting those initiatives up there. And there's some really, 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 really great connections up there that would be instrumental in helping you to take those things that you're passionate about to a whole nother level and get that community connection that you're looking for. So that part.
Thank you. Thank you.
What I hear is is blessed to be able to have a world full of options in your hand, man, and that's a
Yes,
blessing and a
sir.
testament to your hard work and your discipline, man. So all the best wishes in your future endeavors for you, man. And we're happy to be a part of that process with you, man, and see your success and everything, man. So shout out to you for that, Micah.
Thank you.
So as we get into this topic, man, as we talked about earlier, we're going to be talking about toxic masculinity today. Um, and Micah, I think both of us being males in this world and everything, there's a lot of perceptions and perspectives on what it means to be a man, right? We've heard definitions our entire life of what a man should do, what a man shouldn't do, what he should say, what he shouldn't say, how he should walk, how he should dress, how he should behave, all these different perspectives and things like that. And toxic masculinity is something that probably within the last maybe decade or so has kind of come into our lexicon of really identifying some of these traits, these behaviors, and really just kind of emotions really that a lot of men keep bottled up and festered up for a long time, and it comes out in many different ways. For the longest time, though, it appears that a lot of this was glorified and kind of like accepted and enabled in a sense, right? When you look up the definition of toxic masculinity, some things that come to mind is this idea of toughness, that men should be physically strong, emotionally callous, and behave aggressively, right? They should have an expression of femininity. I know I said that wrong, but y'all know what I'm saying. Anti-female. Let's just say it like that, right? This involves the idea that men should reject anything that is considered to be feminine, such as showing emotion or accepting help. We see that a lot in sports, right? Where all the time, especially in football and sports like that, where it's more, physical aggression being exerted, where, you have to be absent of emotion. You have to be cold blooded, cold hearted. You got to go out there with a killer's mentality, right? Because if you go out there being soft and emotional, you get ran over, you'll be weak. You won't be able to, maintain your spot and whatever. And then this idea of power, right? The assumption that men must work toward obtaining power and status, whether it's social or financial, so they can gain the respect of others, right? And just from a clinical perspective, when I think of the idea of men needing power, that's a fancy way of saying that a man needs to control his anxiety by being able to control as many outcomes as possible. But we'll save that conversation for a little bit later. So Micah, kind of share with the people what your perspective on toxic masculinity is, and just have you seen toxic masculinity play out in sports, whether it's soccer, or just in your personal life?
Yeah, definitely. First of all, this was like such an interesting topic. I could talk about this for 10 hours because I've definitely been affected by it. The first thing I'll say is I feel like toxic masculinity, a lot of the elements of it kind of naturally seep into your subconscious without you even knowing, just because of the way society is structured. So I think you talked about some of the unhealthy ways of thinking about what it means to be a man. I think that's one of the biggest ways toxic masculinity plays out. Also, your perspective on just the world around you and what's relevant to you and what's meaningful. I think those are some of the biggest things I've seen as a player and as a soccer coach. I've seen millions of examples of toxic masculinity. Obviously, probably the most identifiable one would be like a lack of showing expression, a lack of showing emotion. And I've been affected by that personally. Before I would say 16, 15, 16, that's when I had that heart problem that
Mhm.
was super traumatic and ended my sports career. Before that, I had never heard about like showing emotion and I was not interested. Like if you would have asked me to go to a therapist or something, I'd have been like I don't do stuff like that. Like that's not
Right.
what man, like that's not what we do. So and that was just because of my environment. Not even that anybody said specifically, um, don't do this. It was just the assumptions that you pick up in social dynamics. Like, okay, as a young man, as a young boy, like this is what you do. So I know
Mhm.
just for me, going through that whole transformation of opening myself up to complete mental and physical wellness, I had to really challenge what it means to be a man in my own walk. But I think in coaching, one of the biggest examples I've seen is risk taking and recklessness in terms of toxic masculinity, like thinking your like how relative danger is to you will get you more respect. And I think one of the
Right.
ways I've seen that is people so I know in football this is very different. Like
Mhm.
tackling is a big part of the sport. In
Right.
soccer, if you're going for like a 50-50 collision, and like in soccer we wear a lot of metal studs, so they're really sharp on the cleat. And if
Right.
somebody
Yeah.
has their foot in the air like this and they're coming through you, you're supposed to pull out. Not because it's weak, but because you can break your leg. And I've seen numerous examples of people breaking their leg, going through a tackle, and the other dude is coming through with their stud up in the air. And I
Mhm.
remember I had a couple boys on one of the teams I was coaching who were like, yeah, like we're hard bodies, like, we don't pull out of tackles. And I had this one kid who I saw it happening and I would try to yell onto the pitch, like, pull out of the tackle, go around the guy and get the ball. And he went straight through the guy and got the worst leg injury. And what was
Mhm.
scary is when he got stretchered off the field, he was proud, like it was like a symbol of manhood. I was like, bro, like we needed you to win the game. Like this is not like this is not something to be proud of. No offense.
We
Um,
got a twisted way of thinking sometimes as men.
I
Like
know, I know.
it's like it's like sometimes we have a a weird like addiction to pain and toughness. Like, it's like it's almost like a rite of passage for us to see how much pain we can put our body through to like be like, okay, yeah, like this is manly. I feel manly. The same exact thing in football. Like, I mean, prior to, probably 2010 when this big study on concussions came out and stuff like that, I've told the story on here before. Like, I had a concussion in 2009 when I was a junior in high school. And when I tell you, when I got in my stance, I saw three hands on the ground. I'm not like playing. I saw legit three hands on the ground and freaked out. I had never had a concussion like that before. And so, the trainer went to go tell our coach, hey, he can't practice no more. He got a concussion. Man, I got called every B word, soft, the P word. I got called everything. And I'm sitting over there like, yo, I can't even think straight right now. Like, but prior to that, like if I could, if I got hit really hard or I hit somebody really hard and my head is like spinning and I see stars, if I felt like I was conscious enough, I was gonna stay out there because in football, like you mentioned earlier, that subconscious conditioning, what you hear all the time, what your body, the information your body is always processing. I tell people all the time, a lot of times our bodies will start to respond to certain stimuli, certain environmental stimuli, far before we consciously are aware of what's going on or what we're experiencing. So even in sports, and especially as men, this idea that you have to play through injury, that you got to be tough, that you can't miss time, that you can't be soft, you can't be a little girl, as coaches will call it. Well, little girl is a nice version of what they'll call you, but like when that's coming at you and these grown men are coming at you, and you think like, well, coach is a grown man, he a tough man and stuff like that. I'm trying to be like that too. So it's a really sick way sometimes that we really think about this idea of being tough, right? And then like you said, to your teammates, especially as a teenager, to your peers and everything, at that point, your perception of toughness amongst, a whole bunch of high testosterone teenagers is everything. Because you don't want your teammates thinking you're soft. Like in football, if your teammates think you soft, well, I can't rely on you in the fourth quarter to be in the game. How I know you're gonna be in there with me in the trenches and really, make sure we win this game. Or even in the weight. I mean, shoot, we used to get called little bees and stuff in the weight room. If you can't push the weight up, if you got 400 pounds on your back in high school, but you over here like halfway bent at a 90-degree angle, and the coach like, why you couldn't get it up? Sir, my back about to break in half. What you mean? I'm like, I'm not there yet. No, you're just being a little beat. That's all it is. You need to get the weight up. Like, and I'm just like, bro, like, so it starts really early. Like you said, that subconscious conditioning is powerful, and if you can't identify and address that, a lot of times for men, especially when you're told also that you can't express that, you can't say, well, I'm sad or I'm frustrated. Nah, toughen up, suck it up. Like, just go out there and deal with it. How do I deal with it? Like, what you want me to do? Go ahead, Dr. Pitts.
Um, it's something it's ingrained from when you all are little boys. And, you know, it comes up in my clinical work a lot of times when I'm working with couples because of the different parenting styles. And what I said, I literally just had this conversation with a couple on Thursday. I said, you have to strike that balance. You have to meet in the middle. It is possible to raise an emotionally intelligent child that isn't soft. And that word soft bothers me because I think that I think it's a gender stereotype that suggests that somehow being connected to one's emotions makes you weak, which in essence is sort of what you were both saying, right?
Right.
But I've often said publicly and privately, our prisons are full of men and our detention centers are full of boys that never learned how to have an appropriate relationship with their emotions. And at some point in time, if people would be willing to break the cycle and to do some unlearning and relearning and reconditioning, we could actually raise healthier people. Because anytime I think about toxic masculinity, I think about it majorly within the context of violence against women. Because, and I've shared before on the show that I was sexually assaulted my freshman year in undergrad by an athlete that was virtually untouchable, who went on to be a serial offender, who escalated from serial offending in the sexual assault against women to murdering. And what would that have looked like had there not been this athletic wall of protection, similarly to the blue wall of protection among police, right? How much different would that have looked if people didn't sort of like high five and make it okay um, to be this monster, right? Um, it's just disheartening, but I don't think that we do the proper service in addressing this issue if we wait until the high school, the collegiate, or the professional level. I believe that it's an issue that we have to do a better job of addressing when little boys are toddlers and recognizing that there we have to teach simultaneously how to strike that balance because we end up raising oftentimes little monsters that turn into big monsters that turn into societal problems, and that's not okay.
I think some of that problem too is that, like, and Mike, I want your perspective on this as well. from what I've seen, like men who sometimes are not emotionally aware or emotionally mature for their age, especially when you get to like adolescent, young adult and stuff like that, some of those men rely on physical safety as opposed to emotional safety. And so what I mean by that is um you might have somebody, you might have a teenage boy or a young adult male who, if they get into a verbal conflict, they might know themselves that verbally and emotionally, I can't navigate this situation because when I feel these emotions, they're so intense to me right now that I can't think clearly through the situation. But I know I can fight. So if all else fails, if this conversation goes left, I know I can whoop your ass. Like, so that's what I'm gonna rely on. And when that's validated by actually getting to a physical altercation and you beat this person up, like you said, Dr. Pitts, it reinforces this negative stereotype that when push comes to shove, when I feel these things that I'm uncomfortable with because I don't understand them, not because somebody gave them to me, not because somebody forced them on me, I just have no understanding of them myself. To your point, no room was ever provided for me, no safe space was ever provided for me to properly express these emotions. So, because of that, I rely on physical prowess. I rely on the ability to physically exert myself to get out of those situations. And
Mm-hmm.
as teenagers and young adults, that might work in some regards, but as you get older, you can't be a 45-year-old male who, the moment, a woman says something you don't like, the moment she says no, you ready to two-piece her because you get a little frustrated and upset because she rejected you and you feel rejected and you don't like taking rejection because who is
Yeah.
somebody to tell you no?
I want to add something else to that. 'Cause there's a couple of things that come to mind when I think about that, and I want to put it in the context, particularly of Black men. Um, One of the things that I consistently struggle with is this ingrained rite of passage, if you will, that so many of you have been taught since birth, that what you just said, Ronnie, that the way to get respect is to take it by force. And I really, 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 really struggle with that because I know, as a clinician, as a mother, as a sister, as a friend, as a daughter, as a niece, as a cousin, I know how that turns out in too many cases. And I've seen personally where that turned into a prison sentence. And the horror in that is, in the street, you demanded that so and so was going to respect you, and you ain't no bee, and you ain't no feline, and not all these things. And the other person takes the beat down. In some instances, it results in a manslaughter or a murder charge. And then you know what happens? You go to prison and you become somebody's bitch. Where's the respect in that? Where's the respect in being somebody's baby doll for the next 15, 20 years? How much respect are you getting now? And that's the part that shreds me, because how many Black men have ended up, and I'm not talking about the extenuating circumstances where you all were profiled or anything like that. I'm talking about those instances where perhaps, we'll never know for sure, where perhaps if there had been compliance with the police, some of our loved ones would still be alive. If in the moment you shut up. Yep, you were disrespected. Yep, you were emasculated. Yep, it was police brutality. It was wrong. But in some of those examples that we've seen year after year after year, you might not be dead. if you had just complied.
Yeah, I agree with that. But also, we've also seen examples where people have complied and still lost their life.
And
Philando
that's why I
Castile,
said those
Philando Castile is a
those extenuating circumstances, I'm not talking about those.
yeah, but
Those
yeah,
are
to
the
your point,
extreme examples.
right? Yeah, to your point, I mean, yeah, I mean, I think I think it's a case by case scenario,
It is.
because
It
because
is.
also I mean, the other
Because
side
some
of
of
this
those
too.
cops in Baltimore and Tennessee were black. So where was the toxic masculinity on that end? That was
Right.
a
But
thing
even
too.
even then too, like, I would also like to think, cops that find themselves in those situations where it's a life or death situation, are a lot of the cops, do they have maybe ulterior motive or malicious intent about them at times? Possibly. But I also think there's also officers who just, hey, I'm just trying to get home. Like, I ain't asked to be here in this situation. I ain't asked for you to be wilding out, whatever the case may be. So yeah, I definitely I definitely agree with what you're saying for sure. Um, and to your point, yeah, when that space is not provided for men to, be able to express their emotions and know it's okay to have those. I think that's the biggest thing, just to let boys know, yo, it's okay to be upset. It's okay to cry. Like, crying, I think, is the number one sin that is conditioned into us from early on. That as a man, if you cry, you're instantly weak. Like, that is a hard disassociation for a lot of men, even grown men. Like, I was raised by a dad who said crying makes you weak. You shouldn't cry at all. Like, I mean, and there was a point in my life where I think for about a good, man, like probably 7, 8 years, I didn't shed a tear. Like, because I was under the impression, like, well, I'm not weak. This ain't killing me. People are going through worse. So what am I upset for? And I would just tell myself that and keep it pushing until one day I just broke down and like 7 years of pain just came out, because it was like, yo, I just been bottling it up, been bottling it up, been bottling it up, because I was always under the impression I'm about to be weak. I'm about to be vulnerable. And, I even have some, theories about why we even feel this need to that. I think for men, and Mike, I want your perspective on this. I think a lot of times for men, you know, we're very sensitive about a lot of things, especially when it comes to being emotionally vulnerable. For us as men, like, for us to be vulnerable with you emotionally, to tell you how we really feel about something, and it's an intimate emotion, whether it's sadness, anxiety, fear, doubt, worry about us or about a situation. When we share that with somebody and we give that to somebody, it's almost like we're giving you our life in that moment. It's like, hey,
Mhm.
yo, cherish this. Like, please don't mess this up. Because if you mess this up, I might say or do something that it's gonna feel justified, but I'm not gonna be proud of.
Ronnie, I literally see, I love the way God lets me know that I'm not crazy. I literally said in a session earlier this week, I was having this conversation with a couple, and what I said to the woman is, you want him to be vulnerable and transparent, but if he bears his heart and soul to you and you weaponize it against him, there's no telling what might happen to you as a result. And I'm not saying necessarily that you're going to get your head flown, because, we're never condoning domestic violence or anything like that, but it could go left. It could look in the form of infidelity. It could look in the form that he's never open with you again. It could look in the form of withholding. Like, that can go left in so many places. I'm so happy you said that, because it is so important to emphasize emotional safety being on the table when you need to combat toxic masculinity. If men cannot feel safe with you, if they cannot be vulnerable and transparent with you, if they cannot be just who they are at their core, which a lot of times, and I say this respectfully, which is a lot of times their broken inner little boy. If they can't be that with you, if you're going to be yet another person to tell them, quit being a punk and stop crying, what you crying about? If you laugh in their face, you're going to get what you get. You're going to
Mm-hmm.
get what you get. I just want to
Michael,
add.
what's your perspective, man?
Man, so much has been said. I want to go to the points you both made about the I mean, before I even get to emotions in like social dynamics with another person, I want to go to first within yourself. And I think one of the ways I always, I guess debunk is the right word, debunk the theory of men can't show emotions
Mhm.
is I think it's so interesting how we talk about emotions in a certain context, but men show anger and great amounts of rage all the time. That's emotional. And so the whole thing about like we don't get emotional, like yes, we already do. So even
Mhm.
if you think it's just like pulling out a Kleenex and crying, like rage and intense amounts of anger, you're already being emotional. So you like if you're saying like I can't be emotional, well, you already are. So that's one of the things I always like to say because I now that I'm in this wellness space, I have a lot of convos with other young men, whether it's my friends or like people I'm like speaking to at events and stuff. And they always start with that. And I'm like, if I've seen them, especially on a day-to-day basis, that's what I say to them. I'm like, emotions are so they exist on a spectrum. Like there's so many of them.
Right.
And chances are you probably already express them openly and are comfortable doing it. It's just other ones make you uncomfortable, but they're all on the same spectrum of human emotions. That's the
Yeah.
first thing that I think of when I think inward. And then the second thing, and I want to tread lightly here because I'm not a parent, um, but I really think that the job of like a father is like it's so much bigger than just like buying Pampers. Like
Oh yeah.
you're like people always like talk to me now about when are you gonna have kids, when are you gonna like blah 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 blah, and I hope I do one day, but I take that responsibility of molding a young mind. I literally joke with my friends, I'm like, when you get a baby, it's like the iPhone settings are on factory reset, like it's
Mhm.
completely blank as a blank slate, and you're gonna mold that mind.
Yeah.
Obviously there will be factors in other places, school, sports, extracurriculars, but in the household, you're going to mold that mind. And I feel like if, as a community, if we just really stayed intentional with
Mhm.
what it means to be a parent, like it's not, I'm just going, like the way you would say, I'm going to go cop a new pair of Jordans, like you shouldn't have that mindset about having a child. Like
Right.
and obviously I know there are situations where um, having a child is inevitable or there are sensitive situations. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about like you intentionally become a father, like
Mhm.
or and mother as well. Like you need to be
Or
thinking of
even in those other situations, you intentionally became a father. Like I
yeah,
always tell men, like women don't get us pregnant, we get them pregnant. Like we make that whether you want to whether men want to acknowledge it or not. When you decide to go in that woman raw, going in there's a possibility she'll get pregnant. I always tell young boys that I don't care how you spin it. Oh, I pulled out. Bro, I don't care. You went in there raw. I don't care. She wrapped her legs around you, pulled you by your neck, like had handcuffs on you. You went in there raw, knowing there's a chance she'll get pregnant. Miss me with it. Bro, like miss me with it. You made that choice. I tell 16-year-olds all the time, bruh, it'll change your life. It's one of the greatest experiences you'll have as a man in this world. It's top two, and most days it ain't two. But I promise you, mess around if you want to. Like, to your point, bro, having a kid is not something like people are more willing to have a kid than get married, which is mind blowing to me. Like, mind blowing, bruh. Like, to your point, when you intentionally have a kid, I have a 2-year-old son right now. And Dr. Pitts will tell you, my toughest mission in life right now is finding that fine balance between allowing him to find himself and find a way, but also instilling boundaries because it's like, bro, like I know you want to do this, I know you feel this way, but I have to do this because if I don't do this right now, you'll think this is okay later on. And if you think it's okay later on, by that point it's too late.
yeah.
I struggle to find that fine balance every single day. I was telling y'all before we got on the air. We got a 7-week-old. He threw a little rubber basketball at her, hit her in the head. I had to pop him in the head real quick, like, yo, like, bro, why you do that? He instantly fall out, start crying like it's the end of the world. And now I feel bad. I'm like, damn, like, but it's like, yo, like, you can't do that. I'm sorry. You just can't do that. If I allow you to do that at 2, you'll think it's okay at 12, which you'll think it's okay at 22. And nah, like, so to your point, bro, like it is really like I saw something that says, as parents, we are the inner voice for our kids. Like that inner voice that we all have, that subconscious conditioning that we all have, those first 3 to 4 years of life that we don't remember, that is strictly conditioned by your parents, your environment, your family. And if you go into it think you can play around and half-ass as a father, to your point, we're more than just buying Pampers and stuff like that. I'm involved. I change diapers. I stay up. I put him to bed. I feed him. I go to appointments. I'm there. I put him in my wife's belly. I'm there.
Yeah.
Like it's not a role you take for granted. Like it's one of my favorite roles that I serve in this life is being a father. Like I cherish the fact that I get to raise a young man in this world, and hopefully he can be an example and influence, how I see myself sometimes. But it's a challenge. Like I was raised by a man who emotions was not his forte. Like my dad was like anger was his emotion, that like a savant, right? A savant at anger. And so for me, I've had to unlearn and relearn so many things about how I approach situations, how I perceive things. Not like I said earlier, not thinking that I can just fight my way through a situation because I'm so emotionally overwhelmed right now that I just want to throw haymakers and get it out the way. Like I've had to unlearn so many things, but I'm glad I did because now I have somebody who is like, yo, like if I continue to do this, he's going to be that way. And he might take it to a level that I might not be able to bring him back down from. And so, yeah, no, I ain't mean to step in like that, bro. But like, nah, but we make that choice, bro. Like
Yeah.
that's us 100% of the way. Like, I don't care what type of position she got you in. That's our choice.
Like, I want to give space for you to finish your thought, and then I wanted to add something. So, go ahead.
Okay, yeah. I was just gonna say, while you were talking, I was thinking of this quote from Frederick Douglass where he said, "It's better to build the minds of young men and then of young boys than to repair like the
A
broken souls
broken man,
of older men." Something like that. I'm paraphrasing.
broken men. I love that quote. It said it's
Yeah,
better to prepare the minds of young boys than fix the minds of broken men.
yeah, that's the quote. Yeah. Um,
Love that quote.
I just like, yeah, I think that's something that I stress all the time because it's just such a big responsibility, like being a parent. And I've never been a parent, but I've been parented before. And I know the kind of things that I've had to grow up and unlearn that if God in the future blesses me with my own child, like I'm going to be so intentional because I really think it starts in the household. And if you can help your young child see and get a healthy perspective on the world, I think that just makes so much of a difference. I think
Absolutely.
we talk about educational systems and different things, and that stuff is really important. But I think that parental influence is just so critical, and it's one of the things that we have so much control over. There are certain socioeconomic factors that are a bit out of our control just because of history. That's one of the things like where we have a lot of control over becoming a parent, how you parent, and obviously there are subconscious factors. And a lot of parents talk about when you get in survival mode, it's hard to keep those same principles because
Right.
you get in these tough seasons, and I can understand that. But I think that conscious intentionality of I'm going to teach, my young son this, and I'm going to make sure that he knows this. I think that just goes a long way. And I know for me that I think that would have, if I had had that when I was a young man, it would have saved me from learning a lot of stuff by crashing out and then having to be like, oh, that's not what you do, So yeah,
Man, like I think even with like great dads in boys' life. I still think there's a healthy level of like we just got to learn the hard way because we're boys, and it's just in us to like just be rebellious and autonomous in our own way. I always tell teenage boys from like 16 to 18, you go through the Superman phase where you think you have the world figured out, you can get girls, you might be a little athletic, you might look handsome or look good, whatever the case may be. So you think you got this thing figured out pretty well. Like I can get girls, I can get money, I can do what I need to do. I'm good. And then you get out in the real world and you like, oh damn, like that okay, that don't go how it's supposed to go. And so you have to have a little bit of humble pie and recognize that it's so much bigger. There's so many variables to the world that if you just don't know, like you have to go through some of those growing pains. Absolutely, man. That was a really great point, Micah. I know, Dr. Piz, I know you wanted to piggyback real quick on what Micah said.
Yeah, well, I want to piggyback on what you both said because I think that one of the key elements here, and obviously it's toxic masculinity, but I think that we also have to look at the impact that toxic masculinity has on girls and women too. And I want to present it to you this way. One of the things that is evident in relationship research is that there's two key areas that are most incongruous, if you will, in relationship dynamics. And that's that there's not enough discussion about unspoken rules and unconscious roles. Well, what do I mean by that?
Hmm.
We all come into relationships with these preconceived ideas and notions and what have you that stem from our family upbringing, personal experiences, our personality characteristics and traits, and things of that nature. So we have these narratives in our mind about how we each, from a gender perspective, are supposed to be conducting ourselves, if you will, right? And what ends up happening is we have these rules. We'll, for illustration purposes, we'll call them pet peeves, or we could call them like our personal 10 commandments or our isms. But there are these nitpicky things that are in our mind about, for example, little boys are not supposed to cry. Little boys are supposed to be in more masculine colors, for example, and not pastels. And little girls are supposed to be in pink. And when couples don't have those those deliberate conversations where they're putting those unspoken rules that you don't know is a rule until you break it. And it's like, oh, I didn't tell you that that was a thing, but when you break it, now you know it's a thing. And now folks are arguing and fussing and fighting over these unspoken rules about these gender identities in many cases with children. And that toxic masculinity comes into play even when at times the child hasn't even been born yet. You get that sonogram that tells you, or the other one. What's the other one? Not the sonogram. The ultrasound that tells you that you're having a little boy, and now you're having arguments about stuff, and the baby's not even here yet. But then you also look at the impact of unconscious roles, and the unconscious roles are: do boys do dishes or do boys take out the trash? Do boys open it? And it's this back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. But what I'm trying to tell you is that it starts even before children are born, because we come into our romantic, into our intimate relationships, into parenthood, right? With these unspoken rules and these unconscious roles about who's supposed to be doing what, how it's supposed to be done, the whole nine yards. And if you don't have these preliminary conversations, if you don't give yourself permission to discuss long before there's any discussion about children, as a young lady or as a young man. And if we're honest, in this day and time, it's a thing in non-heterosexual relationships too, to have those conversations regarding how your unspoken rules and your unconscious roles are going to inform the quality of your relationship. It's going to inform how you parent. It's going to inform how you navigate life, love, and the relationship itself. And those are conversations that need to be had, because it's absolutely positively a thing. And it can be so instrumental in helping you to avoid the landmines in your relationships. It can help you to avoid the landmines in parenting. It can help you to avoid so much heartache, pain, and suffering in the various relationship dynamics if you would just educate yourself about these things and give yourself permission to have these substantive conversations. I just wanted to add that. Okay. Micah, while we're waiting for him to unfreeze, is there anything else you want to add?
No, what you said is really true. I think it's interesting. One of the points that we were talking about earlier was the inability to verbally express when, and instead of that, choosing to use physicality to express yourself. So I think,
Mm-hmm.
as you mentioned, the conversations, I think people probably have to develop the emotional bandwidth to have those conversations and
Absolutely.
be in the right state of mind to have them without them, flinging off the wall.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I think when you think about that, even you talked about before a child is born, I'd
Mm-hmm.
probably say, and I'm sure you already know this as well, but I think even before you get in a relationship, thinking about those things in your life partner or your
Mm-hmm.
girlfriend, boyfriend, whatever it is,
Mm-hmm.
because if you're on this wellness journey and then the
Mm-hmm.
person you're trying to be with is not on that same journey or just has no interest, you're gonna get
Yeah.
a lot of arguments,
Right.
and,
Yeah.
and I have friends who are like, man, like I'm trying to do this and my girl doesn't see it. And these are situations where I've tried to warn them, like, you're trying to prioritize your mental health. This person is not really there and doesn't have an interest in being there. I don't really know how that's going to work. So I think to even be able to have those conversations, I think obviously you're not going to know everything about your partner.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's probably important to look at, do we have that emotional connection? Are we in a similar space in terms of diving
Mm-hmm.
these places? Because if you
Yeah.
don't have that, if it's just about the physicality, the look,
Mm-hmm.
what they do for you, you're going to be missing a lot of that. What's the word? That depth, I'd say.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. No.
Ronnie, and I don't know, and forgive me if this isn't something you were going to touch on because I'm really curious about it. One of the things that we constantly hear, and we hear a lot about it, and you alluded to it a little while ago. Um, we definitely hear a lot about it at the professional level, a little less at the collegiate level, and a little less at the high school level. But we know that it's a thing. And I think that it's important to connect the dots between toxic masculinity, promiscuity, and sports because it's a thing.
Yeah, I think it's funny you say that. I have a client right now who former athlete, former collegiate athlete at a D1 school and everything. He's in his 40s now. Um, but he was sexually objectified as early as the age of 10 by women. And because of that, sex was a way that he would cope with a lot of his traumas and a lot of his pains.
Mm-hmm.
And being and just so happening being a really good athlete and also being, handsome for his time and everything, it
Yeah.
kind of went hand in hand where it's like, I mean, well, why think about problems? Why think about this when I can just go sleep with this person, sleep with that person, and stuff like that?
Mm-hmm.
But a lot of times when these behaviors are enabled, right, especially by self, but also by people who exploit your talent.
Mm-hmm.
I always warn athletes, people, anybody who wants to do anything entrepreneurial in regard matter, whether it's sports, business, whatever the case may
Mm-hmm.
be. You have to be very mindful of the people around you not exploiting your talent for their own gain
That's
and
right.
not making sure you as the person, not you the talent, you the
Mm-hmm.
person are continuing to grow and can have a sense of who you are outside of this talent that you have. We see
Absolutely.
so many times athletes are exploited just for their talent. They don't matter where they come from, two-parent household, no parent household, thriving community, terrible community, don't matter.
Mm-hmm.
How can I exploit your talent? And
Right.
so when you have individuals who have gone through trauma or have not been allowed the space to work through certain emotions. Absolutely, promiscuity and stuff like that, or sexual assault can, definitely become a concern for some of those individuals where they see themselves as, I'm only as good as what I can do with my dick. If I can put my dick in 100 women on campus, I'm a man. I'm a man's man. I'm an alpha male because alpha males is what people like to call. That's another way of people saying, I'm the big bad dude on campus or whatever the case may be. I'm an alpha male because I sleep with a lot of women. I'm an alpha male because a lot of women like me. Or I mean, you could just be an emotional, doormat and just allow anybody to come to your life who will give you any attention, and you just put your dick in them, and because you can make them feel good for a few minutes, that's validation for you that somebody wants you and respects you and stuff like that. And then the moment they leave, or the moment you can't put your dick in them, well, now it's their fault. They're the issue. They're trash. They're toxic, and they need to get out of your life. And once again, you can easily discard a woman and go find another one when that's all you see them for is what they can do for you.
Yeah, indeed. We got 5 minutes.
Mike, I wanted to ask you one last question, and I know we touched on this a little bit, but I really wanted you to give the game on this. How can we address toxic masculinity at the coaching level? Because, like we said, depending on the sport, like I'll just say football, for example. Football coaches see themselves as like war generals in a sense sometimes, right? Where they have to be stoic, they got to be tough, they got to be emotionally absent of, the quote unquote soft emotions. I got to lead these men, I got to lead these alpha males into battle. We always say that in football, any sports. I got to lead you into battle. We're going into battle. No, you're going into a game. So how can coaches better work on toxic masculinity, but also provide a space of discipline and emotional safety for the athlete to grow as young men?
Great question. I think the easiest or the first example is lead by example. I think because I remember I was at this coaching conference in like 2017, and they talked about how some coaches have the potential to influence generations more than people in like your personal life, like your everyday life, like a family member, like a coach can influence your life even more than that, depending on the situation. So with that kind of power, it's really important to lead by example as a coach. I know for me, I had a situation where me and one of my teams were traveling to a tournament, and we had a female referee, and she was young, like around my age, and it changed the whole dynamic of my players. And I had to quickly check them, like, we're here for a game. This is your referee. This is not like we're not about to start wilding catcalling. Like, this is a referee. This person is not existing for your benefit. We're here to play and win and be professionals. And so I even saw like some of their minds shifting, like, oh, he's not gonna enable this. Because I think I was at that time, I was like 5 years older than my entire team. So we had like a buddy situation. But I think it was good for them to see, like, oh, he's not gonna enable this. Like he's actually standing his ground here. So I think leading by example is very important. Then I think creating a healthy hierarchy of leadership within coaching positions. One of the things that I've seen happen is a coach who is driven by power and dominance leaves a position, and then there's this power vacuum for whoever comes in next.
Wow.
And it creates this instability within the entire infrastructure. And then those ideas of toxic masculinity can easily continue because there's this vacuum, and the most predictable way to fill that vacuum is by more power, more dominance. So I think on an organizational level, creating a healthy hierarchy, efficient flows of communication through the hierarchy, whether it's assistant coaches, head coach, sports medicine departments, athletic directors, like creating that healthy balance of communication organization so that everyone is intact and that everyone is able to, how do you say this, just, I guess, surrender their egos and be in complete service to the organization. I think that is something critical because you can look at an individual person, but if you're not looking at the organizational hierarchy, there's a lot of room for demise. So I
Right.
think if coaches and coaching systems work on those two things, then there'll be a better job done with dealing with toxic masculinity. I think. Um,
Okay.
there's probably 100 reasons that we could get into, but I'd say those two are critical, like very important.
Right. I feel like you said, leading by example, but also being able to, I think to your point too, I think a lot of times we don't explain to our younger people the context of certain things. Right. And I think for as kids grow, I always tell kids, you experience the same emotions whether you're 5 or 50. The only difference is at 50 years old, you have way more context and understanding of what can cause this emotion than you do at 5. And sometimes the coaches and just adults in general, we don't give young people enough chance to give them the context of certain things before we just automatically judge them for not doing something that, I mean, physically, scientifically, theoretically, however you want to spend it, they're just not capable of doing well as an adult. So I think you should be like leading by example, giving context, talking to them, communicating with them, putting it in perspective are all foundational pillars of eliminating toxic masculinity and just being masculine, being a man. A man is not just a one set of things, it's a spectrum. It's a whole bunch of things that encompass being a man, right? And so Micah, man, hey, bro, it's always a pleasure to have you on the show and everything. Dr. Pitts, did you have any final words or anything before we wrap up?
Um, just, address it. Take the time to learn how to connect with your emotions, to take I think we need to address it from a societal perspective. And we talked about the systemic element of it, but just like um, there's so many other campaigns, if you will, about stuff. I think that it's something that needs to be campaigned about at the societal level. I think that we need to educate parents of the importance of changing those mindsets and reassessing whether you're helping or harming your children by instilling those behaviors that lend themselves to toxic masculinity. Um, I think that therapy is a critical ingredient because if your behavior is demonstrating that you don't know how to have a healthy, loving, fulfilling, and sustainable relationship because of toxic masculinity coming into to play, um, you've got to be able to address those things. What do we always say in treatment, Ronnie? The first step to recovery is admitting that you have a problem. And toxic masculinity is definitely a problem in our society, in our homes, in our communities. And we have to be willing to acknowledge it as such in order to be able to appropriately address it. And I think that comes through education. That's all I have.
Absolutely. Well, Micah, like we said, man, congrats on graduating with your master's and everything, man. I know you said your ceremony's in May and everything, so celebrate and everything, man. It's a huge accomplishment, bro. And like we said, good luck to you on all your future endeavors, man. We always appreciate you giving us your time and everything to come and share your wisdom and some gems with us. And for all the everybody out there listening today, thank you for joining us again. We'll be back here in 2 weeks on the 30th, Easter weekend and everything. So as always, y'all be safe, enjoy yourselves, have a great weekend, and until then, we'll talk to you soon.
Bye, everybody.